Welcome back. The people and the political parties of occupied Kashmir have completely boycotted the council elections. The ruling Bharatiya Janata Party is the only major party contesting. International watchdogs and media say the polls have zero credibility due to local rejection and non-participation. Locals said this is more like completing a formality, as it looks more like an artificial exercise. In 2018, 60% of over 21,000 village council seats remained vacant due to boycott. Locals fear the imposition of right-wing extremist Hindutva operatives or BJP through the fake electoral exercise. President Donald Trump says the U.S. is lifting sanctions against Turkey after a ceasefire along its border with Syria. But he warned that sanctions could be reimposed if Turkey fails to protect religious and ethnic minorities. Speaking at the White House, Trump said a small number of U.S. troops will remain in Syria to protect oil fields. Trump said he is committed to pursuing a different course in the Middle East. He said the U.S. should only commit troops to battle when its national interest is at stake. Welcome back. Iraq's Prime Minister Abdul Mahdi says his government is taking legal measures over the entry of U.S. troops from Syria. After a meeting with the U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper in Baghdad, Mahdi said U.S. troops moving into Iraq are not allowed to remain in the country. He asked the international community and the United Nations to play their role in the matter. Before the meeting, Esper said U.S. troops withdrawing from Syria will go to western Iraq to fight ISIS. The U.S. has over 5,000 troops based in Iraq as part of an international coalition to fight ISIS. Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces have assured Russia they will keep their end of the ceasefire deal. Talking to Russia's defense minister Sergei Shoigu, SDF head Mazloum Abdi thanked Moscow for saving his people. Shoigu said he told the SDF head to implement the Russian-Turkish-Syria deal from their side. Russian military police started deploying on Syria's northeast border on Wednesday. Under the deal signed in Sochi on Tuesday, Turkey will remain fully deployed in an Arab-majority area. It also requires Kurdish forces to pull back to a line 30 kilometers from the entire border, forcing them to surrender some of their main towns. Russia and Turkey will then start joint patrols in the two zones along the border. Russia and African states have created a mutual trading platform worth $5 billion at the Sochi summit. The Russian Export Center says the agreement will give Moscow access to the African market. Director Andriy Shepelyov said Russia will in turn open a trade corridor to the African continent. Moscow says the deal will boost cooperation with African states through new trade and investment mechanisms. In Libya, 3 civilians have been killed and 7 others injured in fresh airstrikes by Khalifa Haftar's forces near the capital Tripoli. The Libyan government said the raids hit residential areas in southern Al-Sabani area. Earlier, 2 children were killed and 3 civilians injured in shelling close to the same neighborhood. In April, Haftar's forces launched a military campaign to capture Tripoli from the internationally recognized government. In Yemen, the government and Houthi rebels have set up joint observation posts as part of the de-escalation moves in the city of Hodeidah. UN envoy for Yemen, Martin Griffiths, called the establishment of 4 observation posts a positive move. Last year, a ceasefire and a troop redeployment agreement for Hodeidah was reached in the UN brokered talks in Sweden. It was agreed as a trust-building measure to pave way for wider talks to end the war. In May, the UN announced that the rebels have withdrawn from the Hodeidah and 2 nearby ports. The country is embroiled in a conflict between the government and the rebels since 2014. The UN has called Israel's 52-year hold on Palestine the longest belligerent occupation in the modern world. Briefing the General Assembly, a UN Special Rapporteur in Palestine, Michael Link, said Israel is violating international law. He called for a decisive international intervention to end the grossly unequal balance of power in the region. Link said Israel's blockade of Gaza is a denial of basic human rights and amounts to collective punishment. Meanwhile, Turkey's Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu asked the international community to stop Israel's sabotage of the two-state solution. Israeli-Palestinian peace process collapsed in 2014 due to Israel's continued refusal to end occupation of the West Bank. Afghan Foreign Minister Salahuddin Rabbani has resigned over differences with President Ashraf Ghani. In a letter to Ghani, Rabbani said the president is running the country like a personal NGO. Rabbani said the Ghani administration has failed to provide a conducive working environment or establish peace in the country. Rabbani blamed the presidential palace of undermining key national institutions. Chancellor Merkel says Germany will not oppose any EU proposal to grant Britain a Brexit extension beyond its deadline. Merkel and the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson discussed the future of UK's bid for Brexit. Johnson said he is opposed to any further delay beyond October the 31st. He said he holds a majority in the parliament for his Brexit deal. A Russian woman accused of being a spy in the US is finally being released by Washington after a 3-year trial. Maria Butina is the only Russian citizen ever to have been convicted in the US. Her lawyer, Robert Driscoll, said Butina will return to Russia on Friday. Butina said she was on a quest to establish better relations between Russia and the US. She was arrested in July 2018 on espionage allegations. In December, Butina entered a plea deal on a charge that she acted as an illegal, unregistered foreign agent. In the U.S., Democrat leaders of the House committees say the State Department has refused to share the documents in an impeachment probe. The committees earlier issued a subpoena for the documents in the probe against President Donald Trump. In a letter to Deputy Secretary of State John Sullivan, the leaders said the refusal amounts to obstruction of the functions of Congress. They said the committees have gathered evidence about the relevance of the documents to the allegations against Trump. The president is facing allegations of abusing power for political benefit. The Democrats said the documents include memos on efforts to intimidate employees and Trump's request to Ukraine for political investigations. In Chile, a 4-year-old child was killed during the latest round of protests, raising the death toll to 18. President Sebastián Pinera has announced ambitious reforms to pacify the protesters. Police have arrested over 5,000 people since the start of demonstrations. Many student groups and teachers also joined the protests, leaving most of the country's schools closed. The protests were sparked by a hike in transport fares, but grew bigger as thousands took to the streets over austerity measures and inequality. All the countries around the world are observing the 74th United Nations Day, reminding the cause behind the peacekeeping organization. Secretary General Antonio Guterres promised to strive for human rights. In a message, Guterres said the organization will continue focusing people's real problems at the time of global armed conflicts and climate change. On this day, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan reminded UN Security Council to fulfill its commitments towards the issue of Indian-occupied Kashmir. He says Pakistan is an ardent supporter of United Nations and will always stand with it for the common cause of the world peace. Pakistan is one of the 3 countries in the world where polio is still endemic. The other 2 are neighboring Afghanistan and Nigeria. But Pakistan is geared up to go polio-free this year, thanks to a robust immunization campaign and support from the international partners. More in this report from Sumaira Khan.
Pakistan has come a long way in efforts to eradicate polio. In early 90s, the annual incidence of polio was estimated at more than 20,000 cases a year. Sensing the gravity of the situation, the government launched a nationwide polio eradication program in 1994. Over the last 5 years, the number of cases has declined from 306 in 2014 to 62 reported this year so far.
लो ये कोई और तो बाहर से नहीं आया हुआ, कोई मेहमान वगैरह कोई घर से बाहर गया है।
In 2013, the World Health Organization imposed strict travel restrictions on Pakistan due to a short-term increase in the number of polio infections in the country. With the number of infections rapidly falling, Pakistan hopes to get the restrictions lifted soon. Pakistan has established a state-of-the-art laboratory at the National Institute of Health in Islamabad to strengthen surveillance of the polio virus.
You are standing in the WHO Regional Reference Laboratory, which is a part of the Global Polio Lab Network, and it is a WHO accredited laboratory. And if we talk about the polio eradication program in Pakistan, it is considered to be one of the best program in the Global Polio Eradication Initiative.
The polio virus targets children under the age of 5 and is usually spread via infected water. There is no specific treatment or cure, but several vaccines exist. Reporting for Indus News, Sumaira Khan, Islamabad.
Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg says he is open to scaling back plans for its digital currency Libra if it cannot be win approval. Zuckerberg made the comments at the US congressional hearing over the planned cryptocurrency he is seeking to roll out next year. He said the goal of Libra is to build a global payment system rather than a currency. Congresswoman Maxine Waters said Facebook should address existing deficiencies before proceeding with the project. But Republican Representative Patrick McHenry said the plan should be given the benefit of doubt. In Nepal, authorities have found new ways to tackle the tons of waste on Mount Everest. Now trash from the mountain is used to make upcycled items for homes and hotels in Kathmandu and other major cities. More in this report.
A group of tourists sips water at a hotel in Kathmandu in Nepal, unaware that these green glasses were once bottles discarded on Mount Everest. Earlier this year, Nepal's government and mountaineering groups organized a 6-week cleanup operation on the world's tallest mountain. A 14-member team retrieved over 10 tons of waste that was later sent to recycling centers where the workers sorted materials manually.
At least the waste is not dumped. We are working to recycle and upcycle this waste as much as possible. And we don't need big technology for this. We are working out of small units.
Community NGOs also recently launched a campaign to transport waste to recycling centers by harnessing roughly 50,000 trekkers. They were each asked to carry a 1-kilogram pouch of trash to Kathmandu for recycling.
It's not just better for us and the environment, but then it goes bigger, way bigger than that. It's recycling, upcycling, encouragement of everyone who's trying to move into that direction of making the globe into a better place, reducing all the waste.
Mountaineers still warn that the collected waste is just a fraction of Mount Everest's rubbish. Reversing the damage caused by tourists over the decades remains a work in progress.
Shrimp farming is thriving in Venezuela, where 6.8 million people are suffering from malnutrition. But the shellfish isn't destined for the plates of local citizens. Most of it is headed to Europe and Asia with the blessing of President Nicolas Maduro.
Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has lauded food exports on national television, trying to use them to stabilize the country's crisis-stricken economy. The Maduro administration has loosened export restrictions on food items.
If we don't export, it is impossible to survive. It is a call on your conscience. We should go hand in hand, very closely hand in hand with state institutions and our industries. Alone or individually, it would be very difficult to be successful.
In addition to seafood, Venezuela is also exporting cheese, avocados, and cereal. But foreign sales remain too small to boost the country's ailing economy. Most companies are billing less than $1 million a year for their exports. This has only made things worse for Venezuela's long-suffering citizens.
Personally, I get very depressed when I have to go out and buy, because before my life was completely different. When I see this, I think that it is unattainable. Everything is beyond our reach.
President Nicolas Maduro's enthusiasm for food exports follows U.S. sanctions on Venezuela's petroleum sales. Compared to 5 years ago, the daily calories consumed by the average Venezuelan have fallen by 56% to only 1,600 calories.
Asian stock markets have traded mixed over the latest figures, showing a continuous slowdown in South Korea's economy. As investors eye the European Central Bank meeting, mainland Chinese markets traded in negative territory. The indices of both Shanghai Composite and the Shenzhen Composite declined nearly 0.5%, but Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index notched up around 0.5%. Japan's Nikkei 225 gained 0.6%, while South Korea's Kospi traded flat. Australia's ASX 200 index has also gone up, coupled with gains in oil stocks. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For latest updates, you may follow us on social media at Indus.News.